What's more traumatizing than people realize? Story 1. Working for a crappy boss or supervisor. It plays on your brain. Yes, I worked for a verbally abusive a-hole of a boss for 2.5 years. I swear it took me months to get over feeling like an incompetent, battered woman. I was the only person on a team of 12 that could deal with a seriously horrible boss. This lady is mentally ill and cannot handle stress, and I work in a very stressful industry. People would ask how I could deal with her, and I realized that I kinda just treated her like she was handicapped, and her handicap was her seriously messed up brain. Once I kinda depersonalized it, it was just easier to deal with her. Side note though, several of my family members have worked with mentally handicapped people for most of their lives. I've been around plenty of people who could not control the way they behaved. Also, definitely not saying that anyone should have to deal with a toxic boss. It's not good for our mental health. However, finding ways to protect your own mental health until you can get out of the situation is beneficial. 2 months ago, I finally got out from under my awful boss who everyone hates and moved to a new team. Just a mean, awful woman who always talks to you with a nasty tone. I was able to get my old manager back, a wonderful woman who was the one who hired and mentored me. Yesterday, they informed me the mean, nasty supervisor was getting a promotion and they are swapping the teams back between the two managers, so now I'm back with her. I literally got promoted 5 times at a job to escape a bad manager, sort of. Switched jobs, and they all required a bigger skill set and a pay bump. It wasn't until the 3rd promotion that I actually made it up to management. It was more like I could switch departments and then he'd get switched to lead that department. When I decided to quit and put in my 2 weeks notice, he did too, and it turned out that coincidentally he was going to work for the same company I was. I rescinded my 2 weeks notice and was finally rid of that idiot. Just quit my job last Friday over this. From April to August, I was working 60-hour weeks with no days off. She was purposely running on a skeleton crew. She and another employee refused to work evenings, so I would be at the store from 11 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. 4 to 5 days out of the week. The only social interaction I had was with customers for 4 months. I would wake up, go to work, go home, repeat. No time for literally anything else. I asked for 1 day off and got called a princess for it. Said the bitchy manager that needs every Wednesday off and doesn't work after 1 p.m. on the weekends. I would watch my heart rate spike from 60s to 140s on my 7-minute drive to work because I knew I was going to get bitched for something, and without fail, I always did. After a while, the feeling happened so often that I got used to it. I have never been more depressed than when I worked at my first career job, with a boss and staff that nitpicked and criticized every single decision I made and scolded me like a child for every little mistake. It actually made me appreciate and sympathize with those who struggle with depression chronically because damn, man, the idea of having to deal with that crap for years just sounds horrific. Mine only lasted a few months and was cured when I got a new, better job, but damn, it was such a dark time. Story 2. The lasting effects of a mental illness. Even after you've gotten through the worst of it, there will still be lingering symptoms, combined with the grief of having lost so much of your life and your personality to it. I feel this one. I was diagnosed with PTSD 3 years ago, and while it was not anywhere near the insanity I went through for the first 1 to 2 years, I'm still left with major depression that I can't claw my way out of. I used to be super engaged in life, optimistic and generally happy. I'm a shell of my former self. With time, I think PTSD lessens a bit each day, but I do know in my heart it will never go away. So I understand where you're coming from. It helped me to reframe my thoughts a bit and realize I would never return to some fantastical version of my former self. I was forever changed after my trauma and the subsequent PTSD, but it was okay to be different. People are always evolving whether they have PTSD or not, so being different isn't necessarily bad. Once I realized this and stopped chasing this old me, things got better. It helps to look at the positive side sometimes. The years of therapy I went through have made me a better person. Friend, wife, daughter, etc. I am more compassionate and I feel things deeper than I did before. I care more, I am able to be there for others who are struggling because I know how it feels. I know in my heart that I am a good person and that the bad things I've gone through have shaped me just as much as the good ones. Yep, I had an untreated social anxiety disorder as a kid and teen and skipped out on so many opportunities to make friends, go to events, join sports teams or clubs, date, and develop a stronger sense of self-esteem and social skills because of it. Now as an adult, I've had to make up for underdeveloped skills and experiences I never got as a child. It's heartening to see how far I've come, but there is a sense of grief at what I could have had or been had my parents taken me to therapy. My heart really goes out to you. My mother did not get me the mental health intervention and support I needed when I was a kid. Instead, I isolated myself in my room for years due to anxiety, dropped out of high school, lost all of my friends, and had no self-respect or motivation for life. I'm 25 now and getting better every day, but the shame can still be overwhelming sometimes. It's hard not to dwell on what could have been or how far I could be in life had that period in my life not occurred. Along those lines, the power of grief and how long it lasts. It doesn't have to be someone in your blood family that passed. It doesn't have to be family at all. Could be a significant other, or maybe a true friend doing family. Could even be a beloved pet that you've spent years with. Losing them, especially if they are taken suddenly when they should have had much more time. It can be utterly devastating. No amount of crying or rage will bring them back. You are trapped in a world that is so much darker now that they're gone, and it will never be the same again. And people don't understand that some of those deaths are pretty traumatic, and that trauma like that may last years. Don't tell me it's been 6 years since he died. I know full well it's been 6 years. I spent a lot of it counting the days at first. Most of it praying, begging that they'd come back. Some people seem to think I can just get over it, but don't you think I'd be looking at happy pictures with these people I love? Of course, I do. But I don't, because even now, 10 years after Ron, 6 since Koa passed, it still affects me, nearly every day. I've gotten a lot healthier, but I still struggle. I still have total spiraling breakdowns at times from them. I still can't look at their pictures before becoming unsafe. Some people think I need to get over it and just need to move on, and life did keep moving eventually. The trauma moved too, but it never went away. For some of us, there is no normal anymore, ever again. There's just a new, wrong normal that you need to learn. Story 3. Emotional neglect. It leaves deep, invisible scars. I am/was so desperately messed up because of this. I am 40 and just now have a therapist who is the first person I am just beginning to trust and to feel loved after 3 years of her calling me every day, plus seeing her twice a week. Huge chunks of my life were spent cutting so badly and in hospitals, pretty much just trying to be seen and loved, but never being able to let that happen. Definitely. My mom left when I was 3 and my dad chose to be with a woman for the rest of my childhood who admittedly didn't like children. She refused to talk to me unless I spoke first, was dismissive, never made any attempt to get to know me, and would passive-aggressively sigh if I did something that even slightly annoyed her. It turned me into an anxious mess. I am always apprehensive and apologetic even if I'm not at fault. I have trouble getting close to people. I have terrible self-esteem. Unfortunately, some studies are coming out that say that it may have longer effects than physical violence. If you haven't found Heidi Priebe on YouTube, she is incredible. Read every book she mentions. We are all on our own paths, but I know now that people are mostly safe. It's just my experience growing up that made others seem unsafe, and fair enough because it was. However, as an adult, it's destructive for me. As long as you're reading this, it's never too late. Also, if you've recently had an emotional flashback, don't be hard on yourself. I'm 45, and finally getting care for things I should have been assessed for as a child, which has entailed 4 surgeries in the past 5 years. I grew up with a chronically ill father who my mother fought to keep alive, and I want to chalk up my medical neglect to their focus on keeping him around another day, another year. But honestly, had even one of them had any emotional availability or attunement, I might not have spent my whole life thinking pain was something to just put up with. I've had a really hard time knowing what story to tell that also feels fair to me, and that reminds me that I am worth fighting for. Some retired friends recently got me my favorite muffin from their favorite coffee shop, even knowing I wouldn't be able to stay and enjoy it with them. And my first thought was, I don't deserve to be loved this well. But I'm trying to remind myself that maybe I do. Story 4. Concussion. Got my first at age 60. My memory was really good before, nearly photographic good. Now I forget the names of people, objects, and almost anything. It's like part of my brain got locked up and I don't have a key for it. I'm 8 years from a TBI sustained from a tree limb falling on me. It's hard because people can't see the issues, but I struggle so much neurologically, functionally, mentally. I've lost a lot of beautiful memories, almost all my support system disappeared. I've almost no close family and I've not been able to keep a partner. I'm struggling to find work that can accommodate my issues. The future just looks so bleak. I'm as good as I'm going to get in terms of recovery. I never could have imagined I'd be here. People don't realize even mild concussions and head injuries can be utterly devastating, and a lot of times you never make a full recovery, and life becomes so much harder to function. The brain is truly the one thing not to be trifled with. My aunt was quite a lovely soul, soft-spoken, kind, and warm. She was the first person to clock that I was getting bullied at school at an all-boys private school for being gay when I was 14, and she physically sat next to me and held my hand as I told my parents about all the awful things I was facing on the daily. She helped me through the shame. She would also engage me for hours in conversation about metaphysical and spiritual stuff. In fact, I remember us going back and forth because I had a phase where I was convinced that God was actually the sun. I had excellent reasons at the time, lol. Then, when I was 15, she had brain surgery. I don't actually even know what the problem was or why she needed the surgery, but I know that it was explained to me as if it was a routine thing that needed to happen because the doctors found something iffy in an X-ray or CAT scan or something. No big deal. I remember being prepared to expect her to be a bit out of it when we went to visit her that same night post-op. So when she saw me and immediately asked if I was her son, I just smiled and nodded. The way she asked me was not like a question, more like she just needed confirmation or something that she was 98% sure about. Still, she was smiling and sweet and all seemed fine. It's been over a decade since she had the brain op, and she's never been the same woman ever again. She's still soft-spoken and nice, but it's like all the details of her are gone, like she's my Aunt Light. We never had a conversation beyond the surface-level small talk since her op. When I try to reminisce with her, she just smiles and nods because she either can't recall or it's not something she finds appealing anymore. There's no connection anymore. She's there, but all the key elements to her persona no longer function. People always associate CTE with professional football players, but my brother had it despite never doing anything past local men's league hockey. He was in stage 2 when he died at 40. At that point, your frontal lobe has enough lesions that you're not capable of thinking through your decisions or impulses. He became a different person, and in his moments of lucidity, he knew something was wrong with his brain. All of that just from playing hockey, some car accidents, and whatever teenage shenanigans he got up to. I was 22, a 4.0 university student, free ride to a PhD program already in the bag, prime of my life. Was playing pickup soccer and bashed my head on a guy's shoulder when we both went to challenge a ball. Blacked out for just a few seconds. Woke up on the ground. What the hell just happened? I developed problems with focus, became that person who would read the same page in a textbook 4 times and still not know what it said. Tried to be dedicated to my graduate studies but ended up seeing it was really clear my intellectual capacity wasn't what it used to be. Developed depression that I now have to treat. Not only does my new memory formation suck, but I also have a hard time accessing old memories from before it happened. It's been 8 years and I'm still not the same. Don't think I ever will be. I had 3 within 1.5 years. First 2 I slipped on ice and fell backward, slamming my head into the frozen ground. The last one was actually the worst. I fell forward at 3 a.m. tripping over one of my cats and my arms got tangled in my oversized PJs. I mostly caught myself on the hardwood floor with my face. Was knocked out for a good minute, broke my nose, and hairline fractured my orbital bone. The worst part was, the third one was in October of 2020, so I didn't get medical attention for months. I had post-concussion therapy in 2022, but even today, if I'm not on and paying attention at 100% capacity, I'm basically Drew Barrymore's character from 50 First Dates. I'm 42. It sucks. Protect your head and learn how to fall properly. Story 5. Friendship breakups. This resonates. I used to have a best friend for years. We liked a lot of similar things. We're both a bit different and just clicked in so many ways. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, they started telling things I told them in secret to classmates, who would laugh at me. At first, I wondered how people could know these things, and they acted sympathetic. Then, they accidentally sent a message with gossip about me meant for someone else with a similar name to me. Before you could delete messages sent on WhatsApp, I broke off all contact after that, and I've never been able to trust anyone really. None of my current friends really know my secrets, even if it's silly things. I'm still just scared that anything I can tell could be used against me at some point when they decide to turn on me. I had a friend just stop talking to me all of a sudden for seemingly no reason a couple of years ago. That one hurt. I felt like we were really close, and I never did find out why she just cut off contact. I feel that my best friend since kindergarten just one day stopped talking to me. We were in our first year of college, and I called her after our last final. When we were talking, she seemed preoccupied by something, but when she answered the phone, she asked who this was. I asked her, "You really don't know who you're talking to?" I knew that we probably weren't going to be friends much longer after that. Anyway, I told her who I was, and she said, "Can I call you back later? I'm busy right now." So, like a dumbass, I waited all day for her to call me back, and she never did, and that's how I knew we were no longer friends. Then she had the audacity to want to talk to me at our kindergarten teacher's funeral. I just ignored her and acted like she didn't exist, and her mom got mad at me. I'm in this situation right now. I'm the one ending the relationship, but I've been processing it for over a year, so the trauma is on her now, and I feel terrible. It sucks because I tried to resolve it so many times, but she always had too much going on to talk to me about it. Eventually, I asked for space so I could process it on my own without resenting her, but that drove her crazy until she cornered me into an explanation. I finally wrote out everything I've been feeling, and she rejected it all, saying I'm imagining it. I'm unfairly painting her in a negative light, and that she's now realized I haven't been a good friend to her all these years. I've actually had a lot of friendship breakups, and I'm realizing there are a few people who can actually let you express your feelings without feeling attacked. It's important to vet your inner circle before you let them be a part of it. A little over a year ago, I had to make the decision to cut contact with my best friend. It's a very long and complicated story, and the weight of this choice is something I struggled with for a long time before finally cutting ties. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, more heartbreaking than any actual breakup I've gone through. But ultimately, my mental health was more important. This is ironic because over a year later, the fallout of this still affects me. What hurts the most is that after a lot of reflection, it had been clear for years that she never really cared about anyone but herself, and I just chose to believe otherwise. I would defend her crappy behavior to people because she was my best friend, and I was blind to it because I thought she cared about me and had my back the way I always had hers. But towards the end, she continuously failed to support me during some of the most difficult times of my life, while simultaneously doing some unforgivable things that she knew would hurt me. But she did them anyway. It finally opened my eyes to how selfish she was, and confirmed what I had been feeling for a while at that point. It sucks so hard to find out that you're not the person you thought you were in someone's life, especially when you're at the lowest point in yours. Story 6. The death of a pet. This should be higher up. It's not just the grief. For those of you that don't understand, it's the feeling of guilt that almost always goes with that and makes it even worse. And top that up with dealing with people who don't understand and don't bother to even try, and well, welcome to hell. I just want to tell everyone who's commented here on my comment how sorry and sad I am for all of your losses. I understand how completely heartbreaking it is to lose a beloved pet. It's something I don't think we ever truly get over. We just learn to live with the loss. My compassion and heart go out to all of you. We all love our fur babies so much. They are part of our family forever. This is the one. Truly devastating when you're with an animal for years, almost all the time. It's the epitome of heartbreaking when they pass away. My dog suddenly passed away. No warning signs, just woke up to get ready for the day one morning and she was lethargic/immobile. They couldn't figure out what was wrong, and she ended up dying at the emergency veterinary office. I had an autopsy done, and they still couldn't figure it out. Her organs just all shut down. Devastated is an understatement. That was 3 years ago, and I still can't think too long about it without crying. The guilt that came afterward and constantly going over every single thing that led up to that on repeat, I feel her loss every day. A few years back, my wife and I lost our first bulldog. She was almost 11 and she got her right before we met. The night she passed, she lay in between us and just stopped breathing. I still remember her yelling at me to save her, but as soon as I picked her up in my arms, I knew she was gone. I'll never forget the feeling of her limp little body in my arms, or the reaction at the vet hospital when they grabbed her from the backseat of our car at 3 a.m., or not wanting to leave her at the hospital in a room we had never been in, or the subsequent months that followed where we couldn't sleep. When we did finally get a new Angel, we woke up about every hour for a month, thinking she was going to slip away in her sleep. Yes, losing a pet can be very traumatic. This is what immediately came to mind for me. I had a cat that just died one morning. Literally was fine when she woke me up as usual to be fed, and half an hour later I heard one of those low growls cats make when they are serious about something being wrong. I thought maybe she and our other cat had seen an animal outside because they never fought, but I decided I should go check on it. She was in a very strange position. I thought she was choking maybe. I heard her give out this terrible sound like she wanted to throw up or cough or something, and then she just died. I rushed her to the vet. It was July 4th in the US and 6 in the morning, so there were no cars on the road, and I did about 80 miles an hour the whole way. But I knew it was too late when I picked her up to put her in the carrier. She was just so limp. We don't know what it was that killed her, and she did not choke. But I would have had to send her for a necropsy to find out. So all we knew was that it was big and fast. Heart attack or aneurysm are my two guesses. She was only 5. My wife and I were heartbroken. Like another Reddit user here, I cried more for her than when my grandmother died, and I loved my grandma. I think love is touch, and there are very few creatures we touch that touch us as unselfconsciously as our pets, and thus I don't think it's unusual that we form incredibly strong love bonds with them. But it is not something that society really recognizes as being traumatic, even though a lot of people will tell you in private that they understand. Story 7. Trauma seems dramatic, but getting laid off really messed me up. Every day, wake up with a pit in your stomach. I still think about it daily at my current job, and it's been years. I've gone through it twice. The first time I was married but had no kids and had immediate replacement options. The company hired me back as a consultant/contractor. It seemed like no big deal. The second time I had a family with 2 children and a mortgage. When they told me, it took me a second to process it, and I literally couldn't breathe for what seemed like 5 minutes. I really loved working there too, and didn't see it coming. In retrospect, it was the start of a major step up in my life. Decided to move my family to a bigger city, got a job at a company that respected me more, and more importantly, mentored me appropriately, and have ended up making way more than I ever would have if I had stayed there after subsequent moves, but I'll never forget that feeling of not knowing how I was going to take care of my family. I learned very quickly after getting laid off that there is no such thing as job security. It's taken 2 years for me to finally find a job that isn't a temp job and pays almost still $3 less an hour, as much as my previous job. Every building-wide meeting we have, I'm convinced, is a notice that there will be layoffs. Especially heinous is that my old job told us the week before Christmas that there were going to be layoffs. At the beginning of February, I was gone. I'm dealing with this right now. I was laid off over the summer from a company I had been with for 18 years. It's a weird place to be. I try not to, but I still replay the conversation in my head. I am still brought to tears when I talk out loud about it. I feel pretty lost, and I feel sorry for myself a lot. This is not a great version of me, but I feel a little less helpless about it. The job market is scary, and I haven't had to look for a job in a long time. On the flip side, there are days when I feel okay and enjoy the fact that I can just take my dog for a walk whenever I feel like it. This just isn't one of those days. Story 8. Getting fired. Being let go is a restructuring, and your boss doesn't try to save you in any way. After saying what an asset you are, even with staff begging for you to be kept, just happened to me back in August. The toll that took on me and my self-confidence was insane. Corporate sucks. The company shut down so many locations and got rid of so many people only to reopen the locations 2 weeks after closing. My store never closed. I got fired twice this year. The first one was 2 weeks after getting a great performance review. The other was from my dream job over a mistake I didn't make. The person who had the project right before me made the mistake, but their mistake had a large enough impact that they had to close 3 offices and shut down my project. They didn't have another project to put me on. Months of working insane 80-plus hour weeks, traveling constantly and living in hotels, dealing with a client that sucked, not seeing my dogs or my partner, to be fired, and having an entire project shut down because of a mistake that my predecessor made. The tea I have at that workplace would get them shut down so fast, but then hundreds of good people would lose their jobs. The anxiety is going to stay with me for a long time. Getting fired the day after FMLA expires while sick and on approved disability leave when you just had an above-average performance review and full bonus payout. Wrecked. Bonus confusion, that it was my second round working for this company in 10 years. They recruited me back. And worse of all, they ended my benefits on the day of the no-notice termination when I was fighting a life-threatening illness. It changed me, in good and less good ways. The rest of the team was laid off months later, at least they had severance. It was a cruel RIF move. I got downsized from a job I hoped to retire from. They gave me a month's wages and hooked me up with a recruiter who turned out to be absolutely useless. She was in Chicago. I'm in Oregon. And she offered to help me get jobs there. I had to explain in crayon that the company didn't leave me with enough money to move halfway across the country and start over in my 50s. Nor did I have any desire to. It took me over 2 years to find another job. I was down to the last $100 on my last extension of unemployment when I got the job that turned into this one. I have never felt so worthless and disrespected in my life. Dude, I worked at a place for 1 week, really didn't like the owner, barely made any money, had a 1 hour and 15-minute drive one way every day, and wanted to quit immediately. Showed up on day 7 or 8, and he fired me because we're not really clicking. And I still called my wife once I loaded my toolbox back into the truck and had a little freak out the whole way home because, what the hell? I just got fired? It screwed me up a bit, and I didn't even like being there. I can't imagine getting fired from a job I actually want to be at, or getting fired in an actual bad way. Story 9. Being betrayed by someone you consider trustworthy. My husband and my best friend. I get panic attacks when I see a car that looks even remotely like his now. My head is constantly on a swivel while out at public events, out of fear of one of them being there. I panic the whole day if I know I have to see them later. I'm all out of sorts when our daughter is with them. I'm not diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure they gave me PTSD. God, the car thing for real. Hearing their name sends a shot of adrenaline through your body. Everything you knew that was even peripherally connected to them is like sandpaper on your brain. Even something as innocuous as using the microwave is a crack for a random memory to leak out and materialize. Every fond memory with them is tainted, and you're forced to slowly relive them all. When you go to sleep at night, in an empty bed, it's like there's a corpse lying next to you. Just went through this. Someone I thought was a good friend basically discarded me after what I'd categorized as a pretty intense friendship for 8 months, and said some really hurtful things on the way out of my life, on top of revealing themselves as a pathological compulsive liar. It's left me pretty rattled, and I feel like I don't want to let anyone new into my life ever again. I need to learn to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt and quit being so nice. It's like the users can smell the givers. I'm just so tired of it. God, this. Worked with someone for 10 years whom I considered a dear friend. Loved this person. They were a mentor and a huge player in my career field. Then slowly they got manipulative, passive-aggressive, and bigoted. It was awful. This person taught me wonderful things, but turned out to be a fake, cruel person. I owe much of my career to them, but it stings after they reveal their true colors. Still baffles me to this day, and I don't think I'll ever fully get over it. You never really know anyone fully, I guess. Yeah, my experience somewhat reflects this. I wasn't betrayed in the traditional sense, but rather in the emotional sense. Basically, a few years ago, I learned who my father really is. I was only 16 or 17 at the time, and it honestly destroyed me in so many ways. It's so bad to the point where it will permanently affect the way I raise my children and maybe how they raise their children. However, to get to the point, I basically found out that my father took advantage of my older sister growing up. I wasn't supposed to hear because I had gone upstairs, but I kept my door slightly open. My mother and sister were arguing, and at one point my sister said, "I'm only messed up because Bill, my father, hurt me." Upon hearing this, something inside me died. Instantly, nothing felt real. Everything felt fluid and artificial. I couldn't believe what I heard. As the days and weeks passed, my mind began to recollect minute details of his life, such as who he was with prior to my mother, how he was always explicit, etc. This led me to come to a conclusion. My sister wasn't the only one. He has definitely taken advantage of other children in the past. In fact, I think he may be doing it now, since he still has contact with numerous children. I just don't know if anyone will believe me. But back to what I was saying, his doing those things has honestly betrayed me. It makes me question other people's intentions. It makes me question if I'm worthy. It makes me question if I was born solely so that he could get to my sister. It sucks. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.